The angle of your roof and thus the angle your panels are going to be at can actually have a pretty drastic effect on how much energy your solar panels are going to produce. But for you as a homeowner, when you're looking at your roof and you have multiple options available, what should I choose for the angle? Don't worry, I ran the numbers so you don't have to. Before we get into that, though, let's talk about the sun a little bit because obviously it moves, as we all know, rises in the east and sets in the west. And in the summer and wintertime, it's actually at different angles relative to us. In the summertime, the sun is at a higher angle and it's thus more overhead. And in the wintertime, the sun's at a lower angle. Because of that, too, and when it crosses the horizon during the summer, the sun is out for longer, and during the winter, the sun is not out for as long. Again, all things that we know, but there are important considerations when taken into account when you're designing your solar. Ideally, solar is always going to be on a roof plane that faces towards the sun, which in the northern hemisphere is going to be on the south side of your roof. And we published a video about that previously in the past that you can watch about choosing the best direction for your solar panels, and I'll link that up above. But once you have it there, you also want those panels ideally to be as perpendicular to the sun as possible, right? Picture this as your sun. You want your panels so they hit a direct contact, that direct sunlight that's going to produce the most energy. It's actually why in some commercial and utility scale applications, there's tracking systems. You can have single axis trackers that move from east to west to follow the sun throughout the day. And you also have dual axis trackers that follow not only east to west, but north to south, depending on the season. So you get the most production out of those. While tracking systems can increase production by anywhere from 30 to 40% typically, you don't see them in residential systems because the cost of doing that well outweighs the extra benefit, especially when you're talking about something that's going to be up on top of a roof. But what is the effect of the different roof angles on production? Well, what I did was I actually ran a study to be able to show you guys some data, and I'll put the graphs on the screen here as well. We looked at the same 8 kilowatt system over 3 different areas in the United States. I tried to spread across the latitudes that covered the mainland US. So we looked at Miami at roughly 26 degrees latitude, Los Angeles at roughly 34 degrees latitude, and Chicago at roughly 42 degrees latitude. What I did was run a simulation through the National Renewable Energy Lab and NREL's PV Watts calculator. It's a free system that I'll link below in the video description that you can look at to estimate solar production. What we did was run one simulation with the same 8 kilowatt system and same system parameters for an angle that was at 60 degrees, an angle at 20 degrees, and an angle that matched the latitude for the area. The thought here is to see what that best solar production is going to be. When we ran all these simulations, the same principles existed across all 3 of the areas, in that in the 20 degree, where the panels were at a much lower angle, it by far and away produced the most amount of energy during that peak summertime. And that makes a lot of sense. The sun is overhead, so a lower angle panel is going to be at a much more perpendicular face. So it's going to get that direct sunshine, produce more energy. Conversely, though, in the winter time, the panels that were at a 60 degree angle actually produce the most energy because as that sun's at a lower angle, those panels are more perpendicular to them. But in all 3 cases, the panels that were placed at the latitude matching where that city was actually produced the most energy over the entire course of the year. Now, they produce the most overall in the spring and fall times when that sun is kind of in the middle of that peak and low during the summer. But overall, it produced the most across the board because when you are matching the latitude of that panel and keeping it in a relative halfway range of angle, that panel is going to be as perpendicular to the sun as possible in the most amount of time of the year. So what can you do with this information if you're a homeowner who's going solar and looking at your roof and wondering, what do I do? Well, overall, if you want to get the most production out of your solar panels, you should try and match that angle as close as possible to the latitude in which you live in. So look that up, make sure for your address, you know what that is. And oftentimes you are going to be limited by residential building codes to those panels being mounted flush on your roof. The reason for this is that most places won't let you pitch those panels up any further than that roof angle because potentially that could act as a huge wind load. Big wind comes in from the opposite side and now that panel is a sail, potentially causes damage to your roof, but you don't really want that. So you have to mount them flush. So look around for what that best angle is. If you are a home though that has multiple different angles and you have some options available to you, you could play around depending on what your power consumption is like. If you use a lot of power in the summertime, the majority of it, you could preference having more panels on lower roof angle facings. That way, you're getting more production during the summertime and offsetting more of that cost you have on your bill. On the opposite side of that, if a lot of your energy use comes in the wintertime, like you had electric heat, for example, you could preference using steeper roof angles so that you're producing more energy during those winter times. Or if you're looking for a more even energy curve throughout the year, you could actually mount panels at different angles for your system so you get that smooth energy curve at all times. But really, what this states is that your solar provider should work with you as a homeowner to look at your specific situation. You need to know what your energy consumption is like throughout the year when you're using that power the most so that you can offset as much power as possible to save yourself money. You can read the full article we talk about solar roof pitches at the video description link below. To find this helpful, make sure you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching and catch you in the next one.